Hello and welcome to the last Sunday before Lent starts next week. Today I'm going to reflect upon a passage from John's Gospel, chapter 20, verses 1 to 10. And this is the short passage describing the moment where Mary Magdalene and two of Jesus' disciples discovered the empty tomb. I'm going to read it quite slowly, and I just invite us all to put ourselves perhaps in this story, maybe as Mary Magdalene or one of the disciples, as they discover that the tomb is empty. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Then Peter and the other disciple set out and ran to the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came following him and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrappings lying there and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple, who reached the tomb first, also went in, and he saw and believed. For as yet they did not understand the scripture, that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples returned to their homes. So the other Gospels mention 2 or 3 women who went to Jesus' tomb early on the Sunday morning, taking spices to anoint his body. But in John's Gospel, he only mentions Mary Magdalene. We don't know a huge amount about Mary Magdalene. There would have been hundreds, possibly even thousands of people who would have followed Jesus round. But the fact that Mary Magdalene is named is a really big deal. She must have been a really key person within Jesus' close followers. And Luke also mentions that she supported Jesus and his ministry financially. Magdalene probably indicates that she came from a city in Palestine, the city called Magdala, and this would have been used to distinguish her from the other Marys of the time, with Mary being a very popular female name. And then Luke's Gospel tells us that Jesus had cast out 7 demons from Mary Magdalene. Now from that, we know that she probably had suffered some trauma and was very emotionally or psychologically affected by this trauma. So how amazing, how miraculous that Jesus had healed her from these demons and restored her completely. It must have made such an impact on her, so much so that she became one of Jesus' very close followers, one of that group of women who were travelling with him and his disciples. And then Mary Magdalene was present at Jesus' crucifixion and was the first person to visit and witness his empty tomb. She was probably utterly exhausted from the traumatic and brutal killing that she had witnessed and observed. She's arrived in the dark, perhaps she's had no sleep, and in John's account, she is alone. How must she have been feeling when she discovered the stone had been rolled away? Perhaps bewildered, shocked, grief-stricken. She runs to get Simon Peter. So clearly, despite Peter denying Jesus 3 times, He's obviously still seen as a key leader of the disciples because that's the person who she runs to. And then Peter and the other disciple run back to the tomb. And it's thought that the other disciple is John. And John must be younger than Peter and fitter because he arrives first, but he waits outside the tomb. But then as soon as Peter arrives, huffing and puffing and panting, he goes straight in there. So he dives straight into the tomb first, just like impulsive Peter would do. And then it's something about the way the cloths were laid that just doesn't make sense. They weren't laid as if somebody had taken them off and perhaps folded them a bit and put them down. They found these cloths as if the body had simply evaporated, leaving the cloths lying where they were. And John interprets this with so much significance. We read that John saw and believed. But the really curious thing that strikes me is that then we read that the two disciples, returned home. John knows that something absolutely remarkable and astonishing has happened, and yet they just go home. And it's Mary Magdalene who lingers, who sticks around a while, who stays by this empty tomb. And then of course that we read the very next verse that she is rewarded by being the very first person to witness the resurrection, the resurrected Jesus. And so I wonder, if we turned up to the tomb exhausted, scared, broken-hearted, confused, what would be our response to this totally unexpected but bewildering event of being the very first person to witness the empty tomb? So with that thought, I wish you a good Thursday.